Frank Llosa, welcome to the Biohacking Secret Show.
Thanks for having me on again. I think this is the second time, right?
Yeah. I'm excited to chat because I drank a couple of cans that you had sent me on Sunday, and I felt amazing. And then when I kind of reflected back on it, I assumed that they were just, exogenous ketones of some variety. I felt amazing. My mind was sharp. I wasn't hungry, but then I was like, I'm not even sure what I really just drank. So
All right.
I figured that we would get you on the show and kind of chat about some of the progression that's taken place in exogenous ketone technology and some of the cool things that you're working on. And maybe you could start with a 30,000 foot view of what exogenous ketones are for the few people that may not be familiar.
Sure, I can go into that, but real quick to give people a teaser as to what you drank. What you drank was R13 seltzer, which is our new ethanol-free alcohol. So we'll unpack that because it's a whole new classification of alcohol that is, R13-butane-diol. So we can talk about that eventually.
All right. Yeah.
So there's the ketogenic diet, which is people eating a super high fat diet, or someone can fast for multiple days to get their body into endogenous production of ketones, ketosis. Or I like to call it endogenous ketosis, as opposed to, drinking ketones exogenously and then making exogenous ketosis. And the distinction is really important because a lot of companies don't distinguish. So the consumer walks away with incorrect information.
And there's a lot of people that mistakenly throw in ketoacidosis in there as well.
Well, that as well. And I'm rereading the book now, Ketones, the Fourth Fuel, and talking about the history of the last 20, 30 years. All the scientific books refer to ketones as being a bad thing and ketoacidosis. And that's the body's inability to buffer ketones that are going higher and higher and higher. Mm-hmm. So two variables: one, the ketones are skyrocketing, and two, your body can't get rid of them because you're in some disease state that doesn't allow you, to do that. And that can be deadly for people that have their ketones skyrocketing endogenously. Their body's making it and not getting rid of it. That is a problem.
And what are the disease states that actually cause ketoacidosis? Is it like diabetes?
Certain
cancer?
Diabetics, but I don't know exactly what it is that triggers it. That's
right.
Beyond. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist, so that goes a little bit beyond my ability. But I've heard stories of people who've gotten who had diabetes and got ketoacidosis, and their ketones skyrocket to 20. And some people don't make it. It can be a very dangerous thing, but having ketones at a manageable lower level with the ketogenic diet or fasting is a very healthy and good thing. So when you're in a ketogenic diet or fasting, your body runs out of its main fuel source, which is glucose. Mm-hmm. But the body can also run on ketones, including the brain. And Dr. Cahill, which worked with Dr. Veach, who was my wife's godfather and my connection to all of this, Cahill actually starved students for 40 days and found that the brain can actually run on the ketones as a fuel source. So the body can run on glucose and ketones, but as Dr. Veach would say, because there's a McDonald's around every corner, you don't ever experience the ketones because your body's fully fueled with glucose. But ketones is more like an emergency fuel source when you run out of, glucose.
I wonder how those students did on their schoolwork during those 40 days.
I'd be interested in. And Veach jokes about how they were theology students, and no one cared about them, so they were expendable. And nowadays, you can never get that through any review board to fast people for 40 days.
Yeah, no chance.
So what my company, KetoneAid.com, what that did was we created or manufactured a ketone ester. And a ketone ester is in the classification of exogenous ketones. And that's when you drink ketones, and then you can test your blood ketone with a blood ketone meter. You can test the ketones are in your blood. Mm-hmm. Now, there are other companies that also sell these exogenous ketones, but a different form called ketone salts. Yeah. Oftentimes they're racemic, which means only half of it is bioavailable. They count the weight of the salt, the sodium, magnesium. So the numbers that look high, 12 grams, really are only 6 grams of active, but then you have to take off 2 grams because of the salt content. Before you know it, that number that looks high, 12 grams, is really effectively like 3 or 4 grams
Who would have thought? Questionable integrity in the supplement industry?
Yeah. And funny thing is, we don't even call our product a supplement because I don't even want to be in that category of just stuff just doesn't work. So we actually classify our stuff as a food, as a fourth food group, protein, fat, carbs, and now ketones. But what's really important is to understand exogenous ketosis versus endogenous ketosis. So there's two ways to define ketosis. One is ketones in your blood. You test your blood and you have ketones. Some companies will define that as ketosis. So if you're drinking our drink, sure, then it qualifies. But the consumer doesn't, when they hear that phrase, they don't think ketones in your blood. They think the other ketosis, which is your body burning fat to make ketones. So then they make this leap that when they drink this drink, they think that they're magically just burning fat. They literally think that it's a fat burning drink. You drink this drink and you're in ketosis, you're burning fat, you're sitting on the couch playing video games and your body's doing all the work and burning fat. And it doesn't work that way. And I think I'm the only company that actually says that. It's skipping the fat burning stage. It's skipping the fat burning stage to get ketones in your blood. But then there's other benefits to having ketones in your blood other than fat burning. So in the general classification of exogenous ketones, there's C8, which is a type of MCT coconut oil, where 10% of the C8 converts into ketones in the blood.
So that's like a bulletproof brain octane or like Perillo Cap Tribe.
Yeah. And if you do take C8, that's something that you really want to make sure you get a high quality version, because if you get something that's lower quality on the C8 and it has just a fraction of C6, even 1%, that's where a lot of the diarrhea and just, they call it the disaster pants diet.
What's your favorite C8 product?
I don't take C8. I actually just take regular liquid coconut oil, super cheap, Carrington Farms. Yeah. The C8 has two properties. One benefit is that it makes ketones, only 10% of it. The other benefit is that it counts towards your macros for a ketogenic diet, but then you can only take a tiny amount. So I'm like, well, why don't I shift over to the C10, C11, C12 and have liquid coconut oil? I can take a lot more of it and it counts towards my macros. I don't need that trickle of BHB that it makes because I've got Ketone Ester and I'm making it endogenously. And some people don't even count C8 as exogenous ketones. They don't understand that, they see ketones in their blood, but they could have just eaten a cake. That's not endogenous production. That's exogenous. Your body is drinking something that is making the ketones, even though you just had a cake.
And I know a good amount of endurance athletes who intentionally will combine exogenous ketones with like some of those high carb, glucose packets, like during a race or something like that. And they say they feel fantastic and it works great.
Yeah, that's the dual fuel. Yeah, that's what we call the dual fuel protocol. Most of our customers find that they use it without glucose. So they normally do a fasted workout or they suck down some oil before the workout, does nothing. So they're going into their workout with no fuel. They add just a little bit of ketone ester. So, one or two capfuls, the cap became the measuring tool because it was initially supposed to be one drink, but it was so strong, people just drink a cap or two full. So if you're doing normally a fasted workout and you add any fuel, like something that's compatible with your fast, ketones, they'll notice a much bigger improvement. But if you normally take 300 calories of glucose and then you remove that and you take 20 calories of ketones, it's not going to be, as noticeable. You might notice it more towards the end of the workout and lactic acid buildup. But
and they're not like doing that for workouts. It's more so like when they've got a big race or something. Yeah, they're like they save up for that and then they kind of hit it from every angle.
Yeah, that is a strategy where you use so people will do their workouts at altitude, for example. Yeah. And they know that their watts are going to be lower, but they're building their lungs, they're building their heart, and they're building things. It's kind of like that with a fasted ride. Your numbers will be lower, but you're not going to have the inflammation of sugar. You're not going to have the lactic acid byproduct of sugar. So you can do more hard workouts, more days in a row. And that is what builds your strength for game day. And then once it comes to game day, then they bring in, sometimes both of the fuels. And we've supplied 80% of the World Tour de France cycling teams with our ketone ester.
Shit. That's
only
awesome.
Only two of them have admitted to using ketones. And just now, finally, a couple athletes are finally, raising their hands saying, yeah, we've used Ketone Aid, because before It was always a secret. And they talk about all these gel packets that they're sponsored by and using because they don't really do much difference. But now that there's something that actually moves the needle significantly, they're not talking about it until more recently, where it's just so commonplace now. But it's funny thing is, you mentioned the dual fuel in the workouts. They actually stopped doing it in the workouts or in the races. They stopped doing it during the performance, and they actually left it more for recovery, taking ketone esters post-workout and immediately before bed. They will take an entire bottle, like $30 worth, right after their workout, and then another $30 worth immediately before bed. So huge ketone numbers. And the reason that they stopped doing it during their workout is the protocol wasn't working for them. And what happened is they were taking too much ketones. So if you think that, half a bottle or a quarter of a bottle is good, then half a bottle or one bottle must be better. But what was happening was it was dropping their blood sugar too much because they were taking too much, and then their top end speed would be limited. So they say, hey, I felt great, sustaining in the hills, but then when we try to explode, I wouldn't have that last 2 or 3%, which requires glucose. So now it's an education task of bringing them back in and being like, hey, you're just taking too much. And we did a podcast with a doctor who trains 20 different Tour de France cyclists in different teams. And what he would do is he'd do an N of 1 test with them, give them too much ketone ester with a continuous glucose monitor, let them see firsthand the glucose tanking. And then he says, that's why you don't take too much. And then he start them over again and then give them much smaller amounts, approximately a 3 glucose to 1 ketone active ingredient ratio, as opposed to a 1-to-1. And then people would be back to taking it during the day. But it's much easier and less risk taking it post-workout and at nighttime. And people using an Oura ring will see that the recovery scores are just crazy. And we had one unpaid athlete, former Tour de France. Not only did he hit 10% higher watts, he was at altitude, which matters, 10% higher watts. The next day, it said that he had taken the day off. And so he was excited about the 10%, but he's like, I worked my tail off, and it says here that I am fully recovered, allowing me to do that workout again. And that's where he saw, the potential benefit in it is on the recovery side. And we often tell people, don't even take it on game day. Take it for the weeks leading up to it for your workouts, and then switch over to that tried and true food protocol that you're used to. Because when this works, it really works. But when it doesn't work, we've had people drop out of races, blood sugar tanks, and they're like, my legs felt like jello and I couldn't move. And like, yeah, you change the protocol. Sometimes they'll do something perfectly in the workouts and they think, oh, it just works. And then they add a power bar and an orange before their marathon. I'm like, well, you didn't do that in any of the practices. You have to stick with, really kind of simulate.
It's a little bit different chemistry for each person, I would assume. So it's not like you can just have a ratio of, ketones to carbs that applies, to all types of athletes.
Absolutely. Some athletes are more fat burning. They already are able to get in the fat burning stage. And there are some theories that a small amount of ketones in a sports sense, not in the sense of like sitting on the couch, might actually trigger more fat burning, because the amount of ketones that people are taking should mathematically be burned up in 10 minutes, but they're not being burned up. So one logical thing is that it might be triggering the body to make its own. And that's why they're feeling that benefit, well beyond the 10 minutes. Another theory is they're just not eating glucose, and glucose is causing problems, inflammation, and lactic acid, because ketones create no lactic acid while glucose does. So we don't know if it's the removing of the glucose that people are noticing a benefit, or the increase, in the ketones. So it's super, super early. Tons of clinical trials. Some show benefit, some don't. Even the ones that show benefit, I sometimes disagree with, because they're giving still huge quantities of both. They're still in that mindset of more is better. And soon enough, we'll get some trials out there that lower quantities work. But
I still dabble with more is better sometimes.
Yeah, one trial with they simulated a Tour de France, and they took it 3 times a day during the Tour de France, 15-day recreation. And at the end, the ketone group went 15% faster in their time trial versus the placebo group. So
that's insane.
Yeah. So that's the recovery is no brainer. But then taking it up once you figure that out, taking it up the next step in figuring out how to use it in a football game. Do you take it at halftime? Do you take it beforehand?
Right.
Do you take it with glucose? Do you take it?
I was wondering about like
glycemic?
hockey, soccer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, what are you seeing in the scientific literature as it pertains to getting into a ketogenic state from fasting or a ketogenic diet compared to the benefits? And okay, so the benefits of fasting or getting into ketosis through diet versus, let's say, getting your blood ketones to like 1 or 2 millimole from just a drink.
So is this so it has to be classified under sport? Are you talking about for sport purposes, or are you talking about for brain and stockbroker type? Because it's completely different.
Yeah,
different segments.
I guess I'd be interested in exploring both. Let's start with your average. I mean, I take it more so as an entrepreneur, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And so I'm looking for brain performance, energy, not needing to eat a bunch throughout the day and still feel, like I have more gas in the tank. Yeah. So let's start there.
Yeah. So we focus on, brain health. There's something called the brain energy gap. So most mm-hmm. people have some sort of gap where their brain can't be fully fueled by glucose. So some people it's a 10% gap. Some people it's a 30-40% gap. And mm-hmm. ketones and taking more glucose doesn't fill that. The body can only take a certain amount. There's a glucose uptick problem. Ketones mm-hmm. bypass that blockage and help fill the brain back up to 100%. It's not a stimulant like caffeine that takes you to 110, 120. So right. The closer to the 100% you are, actually the less that you'll notice the ketones. So whether you do it, you can do it with a ketogenic diet, and that might move the needle, bringing you up from the 80% up to 85. But the exogenous ketones will allow you to get closer to 100%, just going to get your blood ketones higher. If you can naturally get your blood ketones already at 1.5, and you're comparing that to, doing it through an exogenous ketone, getting it to 1.5, it's going to be about the same. Now, that's assuming that you don't have glucose in your system. So normally we tell people to take exogenous ketones fasted. Right. But if you have a cake and then you take your ketones up to 1.5, it's not gonna work nearly as well, or if at all, because the insulin spike blocks the ketones delivery, which you don't have a problem with when you're doing endogenous ketosis, because you don't have the insulin spike because you don't have too much sugar. But if you're fasted and taking ketones, it can take you to a higher level. But some people contact me, they say, hey, my baseline ketones are 2.5, 3, and they want to take ketones. And I'm like, why? What are you trying to achieve? For sport purposes, if your baseline is 2, great, because you'll be burning it up, and extra fuel will help with that. But if you're trying to be in front of a computer working and your baseline is already 2, like you're good, you're in the zone. You don't need mm-hmm. to be higher. Even 1 is actually fine. There's this concept of therapeutic ketosis between 3 and 5, which I don't know if I necessarily agree with, because it's all based on mice data from 2 years ago. People find and feel benefit as low as 1 millimolar right. for brain performance. And part of the brain performance is also using the ketone to skip lunch. So is it the ketones that are doing the benefit, or is it not having the lunch destroying your brain? Because mm-hmm. the blood glucose spike, and then you get the 2 hours later, you're tired and you get the sundowning effect. So just not eating is half of the benefit. And the other half of the benefit is adding ketones. And I say that all the time. Half of the benefit is lowering sugar, and the other half of benefit is raising ketones. You really should be doing both. And if I had to pick one, it'd be lowering the sugar. The sugar is what destabilizes the neural network. And there is a paper on humans where they tested ketogenic diet brain versus a regular standard diet. And then they tested a standard diet with ketone ester. Yeah. And the ketone ester diet the ketone ester with regular diet and the ketogenic diet, the brain was the same. And the conclusion was glucose was what was destabilizing the neural networks. Sugar is the problem. Ketogenic diet solves that. And then the ketone ester with a regular diet, lowers blood sugar. So it solves that as well. I wish that they had done a fourth arm, which is ketone ester plus not a ketogenic diet, but a ketone ester plus a low carb diet. So none of that glucose spike, but getting rid of the glucose problem, but not necessarily making your own endogenous. You can kind of get the best of both worlds that way. And it's much more manageable. It's easier. Even though I am on a keto vegan diet, it makes it easier for most people to not have to be full keto if they want to get some of those mental benefits from exogenous ketones.
So from what you're seeing, the benefits of doing it the quote unquote harder way through fasting or a ketogenic diet, those benefits are matched as long as the individual's not eating like an asshole.
Except for the weight loss component. Because the ketogenic diet, you burn fat to make that ketone. So it's an accidental byproduct that you're burning fat, so that helps you lose weight. Whereas drinking the drink, unless you use the drink to skip meals, then sure, you're skipping meals, and the skipping of the meal, that's what's making you lose the weight. Not drinking the drink.
Okay. And the drink is best combined with some form of lower carbohydrate nutrition template, whether that's a ketogenic template or a low carb template or a paleo template, or even like a vegan template
vegan can be a bunch of fruit. So, I mean, I laugh about, comparing raw vegans to carnivores. What do they have in common? They both don't eat shit. And it comes down to just not eating crap. But a raw vegan diet can also have a lot of sugar, and that would be anti this. So it's low glycemic. So either a diabetic diet where you can get before even buying my drink, I tell people sometimes go buy a blood glucose monitor. For $90, your doctor can prescribe it. You can get it online, and see what foods your body react to that create the spikes. And you want to really stop and limit those spikes. You limit those spikes, you're going to have one level of mental improvement. And then you add ketones, you're going to have, another level, putting them together. So low glycemic, but even skipping meals, skipping breakfast, for example, using exogenous ketones, skipping breakfast and skipping lunch, eating one meal a day. Yeah, sure. You're going to, notice more benefit by not having those glucose spikes.
Yeah. I didn't eat until mid-afternoon when I did a can, and then I did a second can. So I'm interested. Tell me a little bit about this new ketone technology and what I was drinking.
So just to back up a little bit, the ketone ester, the way that it's designed is one molecule of D-beta hydroxybutyrate. D means that's the part that your body can use as opposed to the L. D-beta hydroxybutyrate combined with a molecule called R13-butanediol. So it's an ester form. It actually enters into the bloodstream as an ester. Initially, we thought that it's separated in the gut, so you just have the two parts, but actually enters the blood that way. And so this new drink is just half of that molecule. It's just the R13-butanediol, which goes through the liver and creates ketones. 70 to 80% of it converts to ketones, so it's very efficient. Whereas MCT C8 oil, only 10% of it converts to ketones. So I asked the scientists, including Dr. Veach, my wife's godfather, my connection to this, and he's the one that's been working on this for 40 years. He passed away a couple of years ago. And I said, why not just give people R13-butanediol? If it goes to the liver and makes ketones, it'd be a lot less expensive than the ketone ester, which is a combination of two molecules and really, really hard to make and expensive to make. And he said that the mice were stumbling. And that was his answer. The mice got drunk. They just discarded it as an option because the R13-butanediol is technically an alcohol in its pure form. So, they tried it on the mice. The blood ketones went up, but, they discarded it. And that's when I went off and filed a patent on it because I thought that might be something that people might want to be, stumbling, not so much getting drunk, but just to, have a little bit of a buzz. So that's what this is. That's this drink right here. R13 seltzer. The company is called Hard Ketones, so you can follow us on Instagram.
So I was technically partying at like 9 a.m.
Yeah, you were drinking alcohol. Yeah. and we suggest that it's more of an after works drink. And initially we thought it might be a good sports drink because your ketones actually skyrocket at half of the price versus the ketone ester on a cost per, rising of ketones. So it seemed cheaper. But initially we gave it to some people and they said, hey, Frank, I went to the gym and I was working out and all I could think about was that couch that was on the corner and like how I wish I wasn't jogging and I was on the couch relaxing. It's a more of an anti-anxiety de-stressor and not something, unless people take shots of vodka before going on a marathon race, like maybe that's a thing, but it is more of a relaxation thing. So it's more of an after work drink to relax. Even people like myself that I consider myself, I don't drink. I'm in that category of it's just not worth it to me. I'm just wrecked the next day. It's just not worth the benefit. I can bring this in. It raises my ketones. My sleep improves. And people sent in their Oura Ring data saying, hey, this is one shot of, this regular ethanol drink, and here's your drink. And their sleep score was 32 one day on that stuff and 72 on our stuff. Or people getting 30 minutes more deep sleep taking it. So it's more of an after hours drink. And yeah, you get a little bit of a buzz. People say that it's a clean, different type of buzz. It's shorter lived, but yeah, it's a little bit of a buzz. But you said you took 2 cans on an empty stomach, and
I took 2 cans on an empty stomach. I felt great. Honestly, I didn't notice anything that I would consider like drunk, or because I was reading the can and sending it to a buddy of mine, and I'm like, I don't think this is like an alcoholic drink. I'm like, I think it's like a ketone thing.
Yeah.
I think.
So
and
the category is, so ethanol is, people equate the word alcohol with ethanol, but technically there's alcohol that you put on your hands for to get rid of, COVID stuff. There's different types of alcohol, but the one that we drink is ethanol. So all beer, vodka, wine is all ethanol based. Mm-hmm. This is a whole complete new category. It's technically still an alcohol, but it's not ethanol. So that's why we call it ethanol-free alcohol. And ethanol, when it converts in the liver, it converts to acetaldehyde.
Right.
That is the toxin. That's what makes you get hungover in the morning. That's what makes you a mean drunk, and that also has other addictive qualities to it, where people need that acetaldehyde and ethanol. So if our drink merely converted in the liver to water, it'd be one step, amazing, because there's no acetaldehyde. And that's also what gets Asians the red face, the flush from the acetaldehyde. Yeah. So not only does this not make acetaldehyde, it takes it to the next level and it converts it to ketones, something that's actually, has longevity principles and benefits of it. So it's like a 2-step, monumental improvement. And I think in the next 20 years, there's going to be little reason to be drinking these hard seltzers in the store if you can have a similar buzz, but without all of that, toxic byproduct.
Well, now I want to get like 6 to 12 and turn a Friday night out.
Well, so let me talk about that. So we do say limit 3 on the can, because it's a food, and the way that we've tested the ketone ester, there's a certain limit, and you can abuse water. Someone can drink too much water. Right. But the unique thing about this drink is you actually aren't inclined to drink 2 and 3 and 4. It's not that like regular ethanol makes you hungry for that next drink, that next beer. And it's kind of it's like a bag of chips. You want it, you take one chip and you just want another and another. That's what beer does. But this doesn't do that. This actually makes you content after 1 or 2. And then you're just like, okay, I could drink another one, but I just don't have that urge and need to. And some people even use it to skip dinner because it makes them not hungry, where ethanol makes you hungry. Some people will do a reverse intermittent fast, and actually, instead of skipping breakfast or breakfast and lunch, they're just skipping dinner. So you take one of these after work, skip dinner, and you fast all the way to the morning, and you're having reverse intermittent fasting.
And I would imagine they're sleeping way better too.
What's that?
I would imagine the people that skip dinner sleep way better as well. Like, I know a good amount of folks if they eat within like 4 hours of bedtime, their Oura Ring data and how they feel is affected.
Possibly. I haven't seen that data, but there's whole schools of thought of doing reverse intermittent fasting. I think it has a few different names to it.
Yeah. Interesting.
So you drank an alcohol. Cool. You drank an alcohol at 9 a.m.
9 a.m. on a Sunday. All right.
Well, Sunday's better than a weekday. At least you got the.
Yeah, I did feel good. I mean, I wasn't doing a lot of work that day anyhow. So, but I felt energized, and
it helps the mood too. It's a mood
clear-headed. I think I was in a good mood, and I enjoyed it a lot.
And the taste, we didn't mention
the taste was good.
Tastes like a shot of ginger. So it's like really, really rough, super concentrated. But this stuff, because it's 4% of the can. It's just you can flavor 4%, and we only use no carbs, no sugar, only natural sweeteners. We don't use sucralose or anything.
Yeah, you guys got like organic stevia and monk fruit.
Well, we did have organic stevia and monk fruit, but apparently a lot of people have issues with stevia, more people than I thought. And so I tried to, we have a Facebook group where people talk about new formulations and new stuff. And we had enough people want us to try to get rid of stevia, see if we could still mask the taste. And sure enough, we did. So now it's just monk fruit. So non-GMO,
just monk fruit,
non-GMO monk fruit is where we're switching to. And we actually just came out with, we're in pre-order now, but probably available by the time you have this, a G&T. So no gin and tonic with this R13, but in a more concentrated form, and it tastes just like a gin and tonic. So if you don't like gin and tonic, it will still taste just as bad. But if you actually like gin and tonic, it tastes really good. So
I slammed that the next day.
Yeah, and so the idea is to go down the mojito, mimosas, anything that has alcohol.
Yeah,
try and make it both low carb, keto, and with this new ingredient, and just go down and eventually have a beer. That's the ultimate goal, is to have a ketogenic beer. I mean, Budweiser just came out with a 0 carb beer. Yeah, but it probably tastes like hop water.
God knows what's in that thing.
But it still has alcohol, and alcohol will destroy your ketogenic state because your body wants to use that fuel first. You still get wrecked. So no matter how, they're all picking the best of the worst, literally like
the best of the best to the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, exactly. This is just a whole new barrel. It's not the bottom of a barrel. It's a whole new barrel.
Yeah.
And not only keeps you in ketosis, raises your ketones, has all these other benefits. So yeah, we're excited to have a beer, anything that can be made with the other stuff, whiskey, rum and Coke, anything can be made. That's
exciting. That's exciting. All right. I'm glad we clarified this. Now I have more context. Are you guys selling these now on your website? Yeah.
So directly on, so even though Hard Ketones is a separate company, it will have its own website soon enough. But right now it's just being sold on ketoneaid.com, and people are now able to mix and match, one seltzer or a pack of seltzers and a pack of the GNT. And eventually we might have other flavors, but less about flavors and more about just going into different, genres of drinks and vodka soda, trying to mimic these already ready to drink cans. And for a while, we're not going to sell the raw ingredient because some idiot is going to abuse it and, take the equivalent of 10, 20 servings of it and maybe mess it up for everybody else. Right now, we keep it at making you have to drink an 8 or 12 ounce to get 12.5 grams of ketones. And again, it's 60% less than the cost of our Ketone Ester on a cost per gram basis. But still, it's going to be 2 to 3 times more than any of your hard seltzers that are in the grocery store. So it's always going to be that way, that the cheap stuff that's mass produced is going to be, less expensive, but hopefully.
What do you mean you're charging more than poison?
yeah, exactly. And that's just the same with like Frosted Flakes. They can get the price of Frosted Flakes down because of all the government subsidies. But here's one example of, cost effectiveness. There's one lady, biohacking nurse. She would do ice baths and everything and eat super healthy, but her only vice was, she said 2 glasses of wine. Turns out that it was actually a bottle of wine, and that 2 glasses were just super large glasses every single day for the last year or two. And she was able to instantly switch over to 1 can was not enough, but 2 cans of the R13 seltzer. And she hasn't had any of the urges to go back. She would normally get the shakes and withdrawals and headaches. And she's been a month now, 2 cans, and she hasn't gone back to ethanol. So she's not buying a bottle of wine. I guess if you're buying $3 Chuck, I guess that'd still be cheaper, but and swapping it out for a couple of these cans. So, and add skipping dinner to it, you save another $15-20.
Yeah. All right. That's fantastic. Do you guys have margins where if we were to set up a discount code, it would make sense or no?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if, we can set up a discount code for the Ketone Ester, which is, a free ship. So you can you can say what the code is right now, and I can go make that.
Let's do biohacks, BIOHACKS for both of them.
Well, biohacks, we can do that for the Ketone Ester, and it'll be free ship for anything. But with the R13, I want people to try that out. So we can do Biohacks 15 for 15% off of that.
Cool.
And that'd be, much better for the R13.
Yeah. Biohacks, I'm just writing this down for post, and then Biohacks 15.
Yeah.
Easy. I'm going to get some more of the what is it? R13D.
So R13
sounds like a Star Wars character.
So the R13 is named after the R13 butanediol, and that's kind of how the scientists refer to it as R13. And then so this is the seltzer version, and then the next one is a G&T. So it'll be R13 is the main brand, and then underneath that will be the beer and the different versions. So I'll make sure to get you some of the new seltzer and some of the G&T right when it comes off the line.
They're great. Yeah, I appreciate that. Any other cool stuff you're working on?
Yeah, eventually we're going to do a decaf only coffee that has ketones in it to help people get off of caffeine. I think caffeine, I don't know why doctors still recommend it. They say, oh, well, 1 cup is good. And I just don't agree with that. I think caffeine is not only addictive, but it gives you a false sense of energy. It's not real energy.
Totally.
When you it worked for the first 2 weeks that you drank it 20 years ago or whatever, but then it never really worked. All you're doing is going down to 70, 80% of your true self and getting back to 95 and then going up and down sometimes multiple times in a day. And people sometimes say, oh, I can't drink it after 11 a.m. Otherwise it ruins my sleep. Then I ask them, well, how's your sleep? Oh, it's still bad. Do you think it might be because you're having 7 a.m. coffee? Because it'll mess up your adrenal glands. And so using Ketone Ester as an energy source instead of caffeine, you don't get the jitters. And some people, when they swap it out, they say that they feel nothing. And I said, well, what do you normally feel when you drop caffeine? They say, well, normally I'm irritable. I have headaches, all these withdrawal symptoms. And then they took the ketones and they felt quote unquote nothing. Great. You just replaced a stimulant drug, which is addictive, with Ketone Ester.
That's
so
huge.
Yeah, that will be a coffee that has no fat. People say, oh, but fat's good for you. Well, what's better than fat? Actually, no fat, just having no food.
I never got on board with that, like stick of butter in your coffee.
Bulletproof. The benefit of all of that fat coffee was to not have carbs and to keep you not hungry, to take you further. But if you can not have those 300 calories, just have 20 calories of ketones, and that help you go all the way to lunchtime, you're better off. And the name for that right now is skip it coffee. So you skip fat, you skip breakfast, you skip caffeine, and you add ketones. And initially the customer base wanted people voting. They wanted a half calf version or a full calf version. I said, no, that kind of defeats the point. The whole point is to help you get off of that addiction and see how your sleep is better.
Go drink something else if you want
that night. So that's
fantastic. So, I mean, realistically, these could be used to help people get off of alcohol and caffeine.
Well, there's clinical trials right now using Ketone Ester to try to get people off of alcohol addiction. But I think the R13, hopefully there'll be clinical trials on that specifically, because it's kind of like a fighting fire with fire type thing. Because some of the urge is having a little bit of a buzz. So just give them a little bit of a buzz without all the underlying toxicity. It could be very, very beneficial. Yeah, it could change a lot of a lot of people's lives.
I know a lot of people with loved ones and the people themselves who feel like they drink too much alcohol. And I'm just going to put this out there for our listeners. 2 other compounds that are really helpful with a variety of addictions are NAD, so nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, and that could be the injections, which are a little bit expensive and hard to come by, but you can also make NAD suppositories. It seems like there's some sort of correlation or connection with addiction and like low or compromised NAD levels. And then some people have had a lot of success with Kratom.
Kratom. I call it Kratom, but So Kratom, I think it was initially designed to help people get off of their heroin addictions.
Yeah.
But it is potentially, or is very addictive in and of itself.
It's strong and can be addictive.
Yeah. FDA wanted to ban it, and then they said, oh, but it's helping all these people with heroin. So I don't know, if you're not on Kratom or getting off of something like heroin, I'm not sure that that's something you want to start. And this one lady who likes the R13 sent me, hey, I'm trying this drink that has, kava in it. And then we looked through the ingredients and it also had Kratom. So they're advertising about kava, which is a nice, ashwagandha type relaxation ingredient. Yeah. But then the key ingredient that they don't advertise was the Kratom. And I was like, whoa, don't start unless you're ready to go down that.
Yeah, it seems to affect people differently, where some people get really hooked on it and other people like not so much.
You're mentioning, I think, tyrosine. I also heard was really good at helping people get off of both caffeine and alcohol. So have you ever heard of tyrosine?
Really? Yeah, of course. So we've got N-acetyl L-tyrosine is sort of the variation that affects the brain a little bit more. And we've got that in our brain performance field that we're working on, but just regular old L-tyrosine, my dad's taken on and off for his Parkinson's, and, can kind of reignite some of those dopamine pathways. Mm-hmm. But that's cool. I wanted to mention that in case anyone had someone in their family, or if they themselves were dealing with addiction, because it can be combined with some of these things, and you could have a protocol of, the R13, and maybe, get your NAD levels up by supplementing with NAD or niacin. And I don't know. I'm just thinking we put our heads together. It's better for humanity if people are less addicted to shit.
but even if people have that quote unquote just one drink or just two drinks every day. So there are all these clinical trials that might show people live longer if they have a glass of wine, or resveratrol, which is now being disputed. It's still this toxic substance. So even just taking away that one drink a day and trying that for a week, you might notice significant improvement. And then if you can, then stop the R13. So switching from that one or two drinks a day to R13, just one drink, maybe two a day, and then bringing it in, once a week type thing. So it's not an everyday, habitual type thing. So help you wean off of that stuff, and even wean off of itself.
Totally.
So I consider the KE4 and the KE1 more of a health drink for longevity. Yeah. And the R13 is more of a relaxation, better than ethanol, but not better than, water, or not having, any alcohol.
For sure. All right. And our listeners can check that out at ketoneaid.com, KETONEAID.com. We've got biohacks for free shipping on the ketone esters. And then we've got biohacks 15 for 15% off on the R13.
Yeah, and I can make that live until, let's say, June 2022 for the 15%. I had to put some limit on it because who knows where things go. Because ultimately we want to drop the price.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you,
Frank. Thanks for having me, and
appreciate you doing some cool work in the lab.
Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, I was day partying and I didn't even know it. But I enjoyed the feeling for sure. All right, guys, go to ketoneaid.com, discount code biohacks or biohacks15, depending on what you want to pick out. And thank you, Frank. Talk to you soon, brother.
All right. Thanks a lot.